Thank you very much. My name is Name Ajayi, and welcome to the 98th Power Dialogue session titled Hybrid Energy Solutions for Sustainable Power Supply. So this dialogue focuses on how this dialogue focuses on how hybrid energy solutions can address Nigerians' enduring power challenges by integrating conventional and renewable energy sources to create a more reliable and efficient and a sustainable electricity supply. So to moderate this session, please let us welcome Engineer Basil Ozunloye. I'm sorry, I hope I got it correctly. Engineer Basil is the lead solar and battery expert at OT's Engineering Limited. So please give me a round of applause. So before I hand over the mic to him, the bathroom is to my right, and please put your phones and other gadgets on silent to avoid distractions. Thank you very much and enjoy the session.
Testing. Thank you. As earlier introduced, I'm Engineer Basil Ozunloye. She nearly murdered the name, but I thank God I'm alive. And I'm the lead solar and battery expert at OT's Engineering Limited. It will now be my singular honor and pleasure to introduce the rest of the panelists for tonight. May we welcome on stage Dr. Segun Adaju. Please put your hands together for him. Dr. Segun Adaju is the Chief Energizing Officer, Consistent Energy Limited. May we also welcome on stage another of our panelists, Mr. Lamide Niye Afuye. Please put your hands together for him. He is the Chief Executive Officer, Africa Mini-Grid Developers Association, AMDA. Last but not least, may we welcome Mr. Adedamola Adegun. Please put your hands together for him. And he is the head, gas, commercial, and non-oil unit at the NNPC E&P Limited. Before we proceed with the rest of tonight's program, please, we are advised to turn off or put our handsets on silent so that it doesn't get into the production. We have here with us very distinguished players in the renewable energy space. And together, we will be discussing the topic, hybrid energy solutions for sustainable power supply. Hybrid energy solutions is not a new concept when it comes to renewable energy development, installation, or penetration in Nigeria. Hybrid simply means the combination of more than one source of energy. And we are going to discuss that today. Let me start with Dr. Segun. I think this question, he is most apt to take the lead on. Can you give us, sir, a brief overview of the current power situation in the country? And this is especially because, as a Chief Energizing Officer, you know, energization means connecting the conductor to the power source. The conductors become energized, thereby supplying power to those who need power, right? So based on your experience and your job as a Chief Energizing Officer, can you speak to us, give us a brief overview on the power situation in Nigeria?
Good evening, everyone. I hope I'm
Is
audible enough.
Is it on?
Yes, it's on.
Okay.
Can you hear me? All right. It's a pleasure to be here at the Power Dialogue, and I'll say I appreciate the next year team. So I've kept this running. This is 98th edition, so it's really very exciting. So the power situation in Nigeria, I'm pretty very sure this is open source information. We all know what's going on in the Nigerian power situation.
That is correct.
We have a huge population, mostly underserved, and some parts of the country also unserved. So very close to half of Nigeria is unserved, 45% or thereabouts, depending on the figure you are using. And those that are also connected to the grid, when we say unserved, that means there is no grid connection, right? But the 65 or 62% that is connected is highly underserved. Averagely less than 4 hours per day of grid supply. I mean, for you in Abuja and the FCT, and you might have much more than that. And for those who are on band A now, they might have more than that. But major part of Nigeria is underserved. And it's pretty very obvious, the energy generation capacity, even the built capacity, maybe getting close to 50,000 maybe. It's still very much inadequate for the population. Not to talk of the distribution capacity, and now coming to, transmission and then distribution. And then there are a lot of issues in terms of cost recovery. Many of the players are complaining about cost recovery, meaning they are unable to recover the cost of operation. Although I was speaking to a friend and says he really wants to be sure that that's the real situation, that why will you remain in a business if you're not recovering your cost? So that's a conversation for another day. But that has also created so many issues. An average of about 40% is what we call ATC and C. Average technical collection and commercial losses. So revenue and liquidity, is a challenge in the market. So investors have to say, look, I don't want to invest much more than I've done before. Nigerian power situation, in the long and short of my point is that it's challenging, but it also portends huge market opportunities. So I go to several markets, several events in and out of Nigeria, particularly out of Nigeria, and everybody wants to see what's going on in the Nigerian market because the demand and the gap is very huge. And so for me, it's an opportunity to, be innovative and test new models. Typical example is what we're talking about today. How can it help in the Nigerian market? So in brief, this is my own overview of the market. Challenging, it has some issues, but I'm also seeing tractions that are happening, a lot of innovators. And of course, Lamide will talk about what's happening in the mini-grid space, what people are doing in markets that are described as unserved, going to very rare communities, developing projects, and commercializing those technologies. So that's my own opinion.
Thank you very much, Dr. Segun. Please put your hands together for him. There's a point you made in the closing of this opening remark about the opportunities. I want Mr. Lamide to pick up from there.
Thank you very much. You didn't ask me a question about opportunities. I was going there anyway.
Okay.
So as he said, with the size of the problem, you have 45%, which is equivalent to about 90 million people that do not have access to power at all. And I've seen that real time, speaking about rural areas or peri-urban areas in Nigeria. So the size of the problem is huge, but the opportunities are vast. And I think if the problem wasn't so huge, and I guess also Nigerians weren't so innovative and responsive to, I think we have a resilience, which means, we just find a way. And I think for years, Nigeria has been self-generating. Most of us are either using I better pass my neighbor generators, or some of us who can afford it are starting to use inverters or solar in their home. So that has the size of the problem has given birth to the opportunities that are at stake. I represent the mini-grid sector, so I'd also speak to what is happening in the mini-grid sector. And I'll start with a story. I went to the outskirts of Abuja, Gwagwalada, when I started this job last year, just to see what is being done. And we use the expression off-grid or beyond the grid so flippantly in books, but I really saw what beyond the grid meant, because I saw the last pole, and I was driving for 2 or 2.5 hours, and there were still buildings further away from the last grid-connected house. And I saw people living there. And I was fortunate enough to have had an interaction with a lady who came from the east of Nigeria. She's living 2 hours away from the closest grid connected in the north central of Nigeria. So I asked her, "What are you doing here?" She said, "Oh, opportunity." She's basically the monopoly fish seller in that community, and she has a provision store. The first time she had lived there for 8 years, the first time she saw light was through a mini-grid. I also spoke to a man who basically, he used to do manual corn milling and sell to the community and neighboring communities in that town. It's called Kaida Soho. You can go and check it out. One of our members put a mini-grid there. And he said, at the moment they put power in that community, he was able to buy, or maybe I think it was funded to buy a corn milling machine, and now his production has increased drastically. So that's just one example of what the opportunities there are in mini-grid space. In terms of funding, you've seen the emergence of the Nigeria Electrification Project, which is being managed by the REA. I saw a few weeks back, or a couple of weeks back, the head of the project management unit was on this panel. And what that program has done is it has catalyzed companies like Consistent, companies like Ashipa Electric, F1T, Husk Power, to now basically become utilities in their own right. And what the problem has caused is that human beings now are taking matters into their own hands, and I won't call it competing, but complementing the work of the grid. Because as I just used in my example, there are points in this country where there's absolutely no grid infrastructure, and maybe I should add the grid utility has no business going there. And so I will stop there for now. I just thought I hope I painted a picture of the context and context of the size of the potential in Nigeria. Thank you.
Round of applause for him, please. I really wonder how that woman you met was able to cope for 8 years without power in her home.
So she said she used to go go to the nearest, go to Gwagwalada town, buy ice blocks so that she can chill her stock. The thing that caught me was she said the problem now is not light, because they get 24 hours power. The problem is the roads, so that I'm not at risk when I'm going to buy my ice block. But now I don't have to go and buy my ice block, because I actually can make the ice block at my shop.
Well, that is a situation of problem. I know they finish. They have solved power, then the road became a problem. Yes. But I sometimes feel that if we would have power in this country for straight 7 days without the lights blinking, we could have up to 200 million patents before the week is out. Have you ever thought what happens if you're in a place where there's always power? You could be really innovative. But if you're in a place where you want to turn on the TV to see what next year is doing, for instance, on the television, and they take light. That definitely doesn't inspire hope. And people then become redundant. Let us hear from Mr. Adedamola Adegun. What's your perspective on the power crisis in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you, and good evening, everyone. I think me being here from NNPC, though I'm not representing my company, it's like having a polar bear in Abuja, all right? You're wondering, how did he get here? So, interestingly, I think I'll thank next year. I attended one of these sessions maybe 5-6 years ago, Thought Pyramid then.
Yeah.
It was just a random thing. I think I came around to the gallery and I saw that they were up there. So I saw the advert for that month's session. So I was telling my friend yesterday, and I was like, oh, wow, yes, we went there together, now you're speaking. So it speaks to the consistency of this dialogue. And I think when the story of Nigeria's electricity problem is being told, next year is going to be one of the stories that will be told alongside of it. It's a very important platform, and I appreciate all of this. So for me, I also cover the power business for my own company. My company is a subsidiary of NNPC, right? And I've covered the power business for like maybe last 10 years, and then the power, gas and power business. And for me right now, I think the power business in Nigeria is in a state of flux, right? There is a state of flux where everybody, there seems to be a state, we're frozen. We seem to be frozen. I'm talking about grid power, right?
Okay.
We seem to be frozen. So every solution that we think is possible, we are throwing it at it, right? Without that, because everybody's disinterested, kind of, and we're throwing issues at it. Oh, it seems regulation is the problem. Let's balkanize it. It seems this is the problem. Let's just do something, right? Hopefully that will change, but it's also created opportunities for issues like hybrid power, microgrids, mini grids, and all of that. It seems everybody has grabbed it by the horn and said we have to find solutions to it. I didn't want to talk about the numbers because the numbers are gory, right? Looking at what it was 5-10 years ago when we used to have NESI stats then, and now almost like the same plateau over the years for grid power. Now we see a lot of opportunities springing up in the hybrid energy space, and also captive power, mini grid power, all grid power. Yeah. I believe there's going to be a lot of traction there. That's the state of the power market in Nigeria right now. Grid power is static. The off-grid power is accelerating with different types of models and innovation. And on the long run, I believe the hybrid we might need is welding both, right? And ensuring we have a very stable system that considers both, just mirroring what other countries have done. A hybrid in quote, overall overhacking hybrid strategy that involves having consistent grid power and then all of these other options to serve the underserved and unserved in the country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Round of applause for him, please. But I'm going to stay with you. Over the past decade or so, countries like India have shown the world what hybrid integration can do to a country's electrification system. India has harnessed mini grids in ways that I think is exemplary for a country like Nigeria. They've harnessed even some other renewable energy sources like biogas. They're about the biggest, maybe in the top 5 globally. They have very profound programs in renewable energy, as well as countries like Chile. These are 2 countries I want you, sir, Mr. Adedamola, can we take examples from these 2 countries? Let's know what Nigeria can learn from the experiences of Chile and India when it comes to hybrid energy sources?
Okay, thanks so
Thank
much. India achieved 100% electrification, right? Last 2 years or so. For me, it was a miracle, right? Over 1.2 billion people with that kind of land mass, and they had 100% electrification across the country. And that's our example. But what you have to do, and what India, Chile, these examples, amongst others, right, that's had these successes in the last decade, is first of all, it's deliberate. There's a deliberateness, right, by the elite. And when I talk about the elite, the elite of the industry, of the country, that this is what we want to do. It cannot happen by mistake. And it cannot happen. Hope is not a strategy when it comes to incentivizing hybrid power, right? Because it's an emerging area that must be guided. If you look at the example of India and Chile, you'll find out that there were policies that were driven at the highest level of the country. If you find that missing, and you find maybe this policies at subsidiary levels of commissions and all of that, it's going to fall flat. It has to be at the highest level, in which the press, it has to be probably a political agenda, actually, right? That this is what we want to do. Then that dovetails into policies itself, and that for there goes into all the commissions, institutions you have to do. So if you look at India, Chile is very big on renewables, it's very big on hybrid energy, hydrogen. They can blend hydrogen power sources with solar and then with wind and all of that hybrid energy sources. It's deliberate. Policies, and I'll talk about some of that later, maybe when we discuss, but policy, that intentionality, that deliberateness is very critical. Second point also is this, and we need to look at underneath. Countries pursue strategies that align with their own strengths and their own future. When you look at Chile is pursuing renewables, and one of the loudest voices in renewables, right, in hybrid energy. But Chile produces a lot of lithium and copper, right? So if Chile is producing lithium and copper, who uses more of the lithium and copper? It's the renewables industry, right? So they can't be selling that and not lead the market. So Chile, the likes of Chile will definitely incentivize that so that their own lithium and copper that they sell also as a market. India, if you look at the states in India that has some of this hybrid energy, it's not all part of India actually. You see the likes of Gujarati and all those rich states, right? That has a lot of high solar and wind sources. So why I'm saying this is the lessons Nigeria can learn is what type of hybrid will we be doing? We'll take lessons, but we will adapt it to our own natural strengths, right? Once we layer those lessons with our own natural strengths, I think this can fly.
Beautiful, beautiful. You know, this last point to me, by the way, you made a phrase I want to paraphrase. He said, hope is not a strategy to development. We can't hope ourselves into development. I don't think we're speaking to any political angle here, but this is factual. Something you also said, Chile and India used their strengths, their areas of strength, to develop their renewable energy space. Sir, we have deposits of lead in the country. And to the best of my knowledge, lead is a major component of something like a lead acid battery. We have abundance of sulfur. We could create sulfuric acid. We have plastic. We have rubber plantations from which plastic is derived. We also have an aluminum smelting company somewhere in Delta also. Can you speak to these situations? How do you think, because we have some areas of strength, if you ask me, we can be a global power perhaps in production of lead acid batteries. We can be a global power in production of solar panel frames because they use aluminum. Can you speak to that Nigerian situation?
Okay. I also think when we talk about strength, we might need to create an hierarchy of those strengths
Okay.
and look at the easiest ones we can do. I would not advise us to go into lead or any. You can't compete with China at this stage with any of those resources, honestly. Even the US can't compete. You can't, basically. You have to think about your comparative advantage, right? And where I would even say we should start when it comes to hybrid is looking at those resources like wind. Where it's wind, I don't think wind in Nigeria, maybe it's not the biggest, but look at solar, right? Look at solar. And if you're talking about hybrid, look at one of the biggest hybrid systems we have right now in Nigeria, actually, mostly things around CNG plus solar. You find people who are off-grid, and what they do is they have CNG and they have solar. I actually went to a place recently where they are powered by solar mainly, then at night, then they switch to probably CNG. So you look at what is available first, right? And then layer whatever policy you have on that. But you also have to be careful not to go into places where you can't compete, like China. I'm not sure you can compete with China on solar panels right now, unless maybe you want to go the quality option like Canada would do and say ours has more quality than China. But I believe that even has to be just few areas where we have an advantage. Let's do hybrid in this area. Let's push policies and incentives, and then we get it going.
So we should figure our comparative advantage.
Yes, I believe so.
Let's get to Mr. Lamide, right? You are the CEO of AMDA, Association of Mini-Grid Developers in Africa. Can you share with us some of your, can you share with us a successful case study of mini-grid that was implemented by you or any of your members? And while on that, can you also highlight for us the potential of hybrid energy systems in Nigeria?
Thank you very much. I think he's sort of hit the nail on the head in terms of, first of all, using comparative advantage. And Nigeria does have we're quite blessed with numerous sources of energy. Apart from petroleum, oil and gas, we got hydro, extensive. I believe if we were to utilize our total hydro capacity today, we would probably be able to generate about 20 gigawatts worth of electricity. Wind is also an option, and I think it goes without saying that solar is very much a natural source of power in Nigeria. So we're nowhere near tapping the full potential of what exists today. In terms of, I guess, advantages of hybrid systems, I would say one thing he's stated was that we play to our strengths. Today, you already have, we're an oil-producing country, and thankfully with Dangote coming in, we're an oil refining country as well. And we can leverage the mixture of solar with hybrid. We've got quite a few systems we've got quite a few mini-grids today, for example, in Ogun State, as Rubitech Solar Hybrid, which uses a combination of solar, battery, and diesel. There's one in Gadua in Gombe State that does a combination of, again, solar, diesel, and battery. Husk Power Systems, actually, incidentally, has 10 hybrid solar mini-grids in Nasarawa State that has a combination of solar and biomass. So those are examples. In terms of even at the utility scale end of the value chain, you have companies like North-South Power that are exploring building sort of floating solar in their dams to power, to serve as a support or reserve for the hydro capacity. I think currently exploring a 20 megawatts scale solar project. And companies like Mainstream, where I used to work for, had started conversations around building a 500 megawatt capacity solar, land-mounted solar, 350 at the Kainji, and 150 at Jeba. So those are examples of case studies where we're seeing the emergence of hybrid usage. And I dare say also, if we, speaking less about the sources, now speaking about the hybrid systems now, you have the emergence of interconnected mini-grids, which is essentially a mini-grid utility that is powering a community where the grid already exists, but they're complementing each other. So one person serves as a reserve supplier for the other. I believe in the case of Total, which is being built by AMDA's member PowerGen, it's a 325 kilowatt peak, which is about 0.32 or 0.33 megawatts of power. And they're supplying that community. And there's an arrangement with Abuja Disco that they would supply and Abuja covers any shortfall up to the peak power that they can supply. So we're seeing, not just in terms of the sources of hybrid, we're seeing hybrid systems in terms of ecosystems being created around interconnected mini-grids. So I think I'll stop there for now. Thank you.
Thank you very much. To Dr. Segun Adaju. We have heard from Mr. Lamide and Adedamola about how mini-grids can hybridize, combining with hydro or CNG, such as cases which you've cited. My question now is, how can Nigeria explore its hybrid energy potential to improve energy access?
Okay, thank you so much. In reacting to this, let me also, build on Adedamola's comment about India and Chile.
Okay.
So I was privileged to visit India sometime in 2014 with a team of delegation from Nigeria. And it was, I came back from that trip totally convinced that I will operate in this space and that we need to try and replicate what India has done. And that's how the success you mentioned came about. Interestingly, I visited Horsepower. Horsepower started, building mini-grids using husk. That's where the name comes from. Rice husk.
Okay. Biomass.
Yes, biomass. And today, they deploy solar. That's actually where that name came from. And then I visited a farm called Jain Irrigation. I've forgotten the part of India where that is now. Is a group of agricultural value chain companies. They have one that produces fruits, juice, and all the rest. And then they build a 2 megawatt hybrid power plant, a combination of solar panels and a biogas technology that converts those wastages from the fruits into energy. Collectively, 2 megawatts to power their facility. It was incredible for me. I was also in a place like Rajasthan. So when we came back, I started comparing Rajasthan to Borno State, Maiduguri. Similar features. Solar irradiation, peaks on hour 7 to 8 hours per day. And what they've done over there is just incredible. And I just feel like, look, why can't Nigeria turn Maiduguri to another Rajasthan, really? So clearly, there are test cases that it's possible. And Nigeria has that opportunity, to leverage on the potentials of hybrid power. Now, hybrid power, common terms, minimum of 2 energy sources that are dissimilar. That means they are not the same. And it's been mentioned, for example, and I think Nigerians are already used to that kind of, hybrid power system. So you have grid power in your house, you don't have up to 4 hours. You have generator, you upgrade and have inverter, and just in case, right? And at some time, people now start adding solar panels. So you can go to your house and find almost 4 sources: grid, gen, solar, battery, hybrid. But let me give you some examples of the opportunities that we have seen, in addition to what Olamide Adedamola has mentioned. I've seen banks. I'm a former banker, and I was one of those that started convincing banks that look, you are not in the business of power generation. You are in financial services. But as a branch manager, as a regional manager in those days, I spend more effort on how do I power my branches, what's going to happen, is there any downtime, than generating businesses. So we say, look, banks, let the likes of Daystar, Starsight, F1T, Energy, give them your energy. These are energy companies. You are a bank. Go and focus on bank. Now, banks, what they do is they are outsourcing their power generation services to this organization. And this organization are so smart, they come in, they ask Bank A, submit all your power sources to me. In fact, your generator, sell it to me. I will take over. Every month, I bill you this amount. But I will take responsibility to pay the NEPA bill. Your diesel generator, if I need to use it, I fund it. Now I feel that I want to put solar panel and battery backup because I'm the one in charge of power situation here, and I want to cut the cost. And then the savings that I give you, we share it. And those guys are making money just by doing simple things like this. Let me also tell you one example of a hybrid system that one of our members, and I'll mention the name, Dotun Tokun, Solar Mate Engineering. He posted on the Nigerian platform today, and we're congratulating him. I don't know how many of us know Nigerian National Arts Theatre in Lagos.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So it's being refurbished now by its bankers committee, and one of those things they have decided to do is to have a hybrid power system in there. And SolarMate is the EPC, Engineering, Procurement, and Construction Company. Today, they've deployed a 1.2 megawatt, megawatt P, we call it, right? Of solar panels, 1.5 megawatt of PV inverters, meaning that can also at some time feed into the national grid. And then with about 2.5 megawatts of power conversion system. So that means it can also convert, there's what we call I've forgotten what engineers call it now. I'm a banker and economist. I just found myself here because I went to India and saw opportunity. The power conversion system, 2.5 megawatt, and then 4.8 megawatt hour of lithium batteries. National Art Theatre in Lagos. A typical example of what Nigeria can do. So it's a big opportunity. So when we say hybrid power or decentralized energy generation, I say Nigerians, we're already familiar with it. What we need to do now is how do we tweak this to make it more sustainable, more renewable, right? I'm a renewable person. Reduce more of the diesel generator that we use because there are emissions, and then do more sustainable energy solutions. Another company, Blue Camel, please permit me to mention their names. These are guys I'm very proud of. There's an apartment in Guzape Hills, should be close to 10 years now that it is completely powered by renewable energy hybrid solution. In fact,
Rooftop solutions.
Yes.
Rooftop solutions.
Rooftop. They don't have grid there. They refuse to have grid. And they don't have generator. So they use solar, battery backup, wind, small wind, 1 kilowatt wind on this rooftop, and what's it called? Solar water heaters. 10 apartments in Guzape.
Wow.
Nigeria is already, I think we have a lot of potentials of what we can really deploy for hybrid power solutions.
Well, a round of applause for him, please. Dr. Segun, I love the points you made. Of course, coming with the contributions of Mr. Lamide and Adedamola. You talked about decentralizing energy production, and we can achieve this using hybrid solutions. But these companies you've mentioned seem to be mega companies, and they're not so much. So how can we deepen this hybrid solutions, penetration of hybrid solutions in more communities? Because to convince a bank, you know what it takes to convince a bank that you want to be the one in charge of their power solution or their power generation. it's not that easy for any average company, not talk about an average individual. How do you think that this can be made to happen among more companies and more individuals?
Okay, so yeah, mega companies, maybe. I mean, Energy is a company owned by Nigeria, and it started, 2 or 3 guys just came together and said, hey, let's fund this company. Today they are moving towards mega deals. I mean, Bill Gates has invested into that company through Breakthrough Ventures, right? I also know in AMDA, there are a lot of members of AMDA that also started very small, and today, I mean, Ecob Lighting is one guy I see each time, and, Alex, starting from today, he's doing big deals, right? Okay, so we can start from wherever we are, and I know there are a few startups here. I mean, I have a few friends there that are starting up, and that can also grow up and become big, right? So identify your space, where do you want to play, and create that, USP, and value proposition that your customers can take advantage of. So we need to have many man. RIAN, Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, I'm sure RIAN should have close to 300 members. AMDA is cut across the whole of Africa. Africa.
Yes.
Yes, Africa.
Well,
Kenya.
I'd say sub-Saharan Africa.
Sub-Saharan
that's
Africa,
right.
right. So yeah, that's how I see this happening. In our own space, we decide that, look, this is where we want to play. We want to focus on SMEs. We want to take out these generators and deploy energy solutions. There was a case study you mentioned of that woman.
Yes.
That is 2-3 hours away from the nearest pole. So we also experienced that. Went to a community where there are no chilled drinks, and the woman had to travel to buy ice blocks to freeze water for us to drink. And we come up with that. So there should be technologies that can solve this solution. And today we deploy what we call solar fridges and solar freezers that are completely powered by, solar power, standalone. And in those communities, they don't buy ice packs or ice blocks anymore. And it's a standalone fridge or freezer, the cool box, the sure chill, the Ampere innovation. Yeah.
Well, but you can agree with me, sir, that this equipment you're talking about, the DC fridge and the DC television, those are way more expensive than the AC counterparts. But maybe you will continue on this line. Speak to policy and regulation, because we cannot achieve significant hybrid solution penetration in our country without good policies. He talked about, Mr. Adedamala talked about how we cannot really compete with giants like maybe renewable energy giants like maybe India, because of what? Maybe they have certain resources more than we do. I'm sure that what can help us, what can help Nigerian companies, Nigerian engineers, Nigerian families to benefit from hybrid solutions should be policies and regulations that are implemented honestly and thoughtfully. Can you speak to that? What is your advice to government with respect to policies and regulations?
Okay, so I also take, case studies and instances, and particularly from India or Chile. India was very, they were conscious of what they wanted to achieve and do. For example, and we had the opportunity of meeting the minister then. They have, and I think they still have, they should still have, a Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. They have a Ministry of New and Renewable Energy. And then they also had what they call the Indian Solar Mission, that spelled out clearly what they wanted to achieve at any particular point in time. Those are policy issues. Those are government, efforts. I will want to say, well, Nigerian government, I want to commend the level of effort so far, particularly organizations like the Rural Electrification Agency, my brother Abba, the works that they are doing in there. So we're seeing energizing education, energizing agriculture, and the rest, how it's coming up. So there are some policy frameworks that we already have in Nigeria that you and I need to probably read and take advantage of. The Electricity Act is also pushing towards renewables. But there are still much more policies and frameworks and incentives that we need to put in place. It's not as if we cannot manufacture solar panels in Nigeria and try to be competing with China. Okay, so China was also very specific of what they wanted to do. For example, there are loans you take in China that the interest rates are negative. What does it mean? They pay you rebate for taking a loan to operate in that market. You know, in Nigeria, you go and take a loan, you pay interest. They pay you interest to take it. I mean, how can I compete? So maybe Nigeria needs to begin to think along that line that, okay, if there is a sector that is very critical to the economy of Nigeria, maybe it should be negative interest. I don't want to use the word subsidy, right? Okay, so but, and there are few organizations that I also know that are also today assembling solar panels in Nigeria, the Obzanos. There's a young man in Enugu that is doing inverter. What's his name now? So we can encourage local production and manufacturing, but policy is very, very critical. The Nigerian government needs to do much more than we've done now. I start by commending the few efforts that's been done so that they can do more. But countries that started the revolution in renewable energy and hybrid solar power, they created incentives. For example, in Germany, when they started, if you put solar panel on your rooftop, there are rebates, there are tax incentives. There's what we call net metering policy. You can contribute your excess to the national grid. I mean, my place in Lagos, I'm wasting energy. I have arrays of panel on my roof. My batteries are at float. That's what engineers told me. All the time, it's fully charged, and I'm just wasting the rest.
So you can sell to your neighbor.
I mean, I should be able to sell to my neighbor. So if there's net metering now, then I can sell to Ikeja Electric and collect checks every month from them.
Wow. We don't have a policy for that yet.
In putting, solar panel on their rooftops. Those are kind of incentives that and policy framework that I expect to see much more. But good effort so far, maybe 30-35%. So we still have 70% and the rest to go.
Thank you very much. Please, a round of applause for him. Mr. Lamide, I want you to first of all continue on this line of what can be done in terms of policy and regulation, with respect to hybrid solution.
Yeah, thank you very much. So I think you sort of said it all, but I will speak from a Pan-African perspective. Because we see what happens in Nigeria, DRC, Zambia, and Nigeria is it's an unfortunate stat. Actually, Nigeria is actually far in terms of policy environment. We don't necessarily struggle with. I agree with the incentives that there's a lot that needs to happen, and it also speaks to the point you made about it has to come from the top, full force of the presidency, to drive this and make it if this is the one thing I get right in my administration, this must happen. So I think I agree with that. But I think we don't generally suffer from. We have beautiful policy statements. We have beautiful regulations. We have lawyers for centuries in Nigeria. So what I think, struggle with is implementation. And I think proper planning. So it may be a case of too many cooks spoiling the broth, where what is the good elements of what was happening previously are not necessarily carried along into a new administration. And so a lot of inertia in the process of delivering power. So one of the questions that was asked to me before we got on stage was, what are the 3 things I would propose to solve Nigeria's problem? Well, whilst I would say a lot more than 3, but I think, proper planning. So an integrated approach. Nigeria is a defined geographical area. We know exactly where the grid exists today. There's no reason why, even at the grid level, you and I should not be assured of band A plus level quality of service. There's no reason today. And I think what tends to happen is that because we're taking everything and we're working in silos. We haven't looked at Nigeria as a whole. Plan and decide, okay, what are the parts of Nigeria today that need that the grid exists? What is the quality of service that is going into those areas that the grid exists? How much do I need to do to reinforce the networks to ensure that I can guarantee 20 plus, 20, 23 plus hours of power in the existing grid? And who will do that and fund that? What are the areas that are off-grid and need different types of solutions like solar home systems, like mesh grids, like mini grids? And how do I incentivize companies like Sea Solar, Consistent to come into this sector and build the infrastructure? So today we have those policies, but I think the implementation is done in patchwork. And that's why you have to commend the efforts of the REA. They're like the star kids of the electricity sector now, because that's where stuff is actually happening. As he said, grid power has been stagnant for years, if not receding. You know, so I use the expression where we've been scrambling over 3.5 megawatts for years. When we will go sign documents, talk about Siemens, and by 2025 we want to get 25 gigawatts, but nothing's happening. So I think in terms of policy, I think there's more that could be done. And I mean, he's on the field, so he could tell you for free that he could get more incentives. And I think it has to be driven from the top. There's no reason why. And I was speaking to a banker from Access Bank today when I was on my way here. And, you know, today where we have such a heavy interest rate environment. So, I mean, most of these guys, there's no real incentive to give money to businesses, because they could put their money in treasury bills or bonds today and make it 20 plus %. So that means that if he's going to borrow, he's borrowing at a premium on that quite expensive base rates, the risk-free rates. So I think those incentives, there has to be a deliberate attempt from the top to drive and to literally promote the uptake and scale of these technologies, because you have entrepreneurs for days, people that will literally quit their job in a bank and start energy business tomorrow if the right environment was in place. I think I'll stop there and yeah, hand back to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Lamide. You had talked about the role of leadership in executing useful regulatory frameworks. You talked about the implementation as an aspect that is lacking. And you also made mention of the impediments that high interest rates bring to the work of companies, organizations who are interested in hybrid solutions. Let us go to Mr. Adadamola. With your experience in policy development in the energy value chain, what policy and regulatory frameworks can you recommend for hybrid solutions? And before you go on, you know, NNPC is also a player in the renewable energy transition. I do know for certain that you're the ones in charge of biomass or biogas, one or both of those, in terms of integrating biogas into renewable energy space. Some years back when I was working on a 140 kiloton per annum biogas plant with my company Otis and some other international consultants, we discovered that Nigeria, for instance, this is just an instance, we discovered that we do not have regulatory frameworks that speak to biogas. One was proposed at the National Assembly, probably mid last year, but nothing further has been done. And the document is a little bit bland. It doesn't really speak to technicalities, because as an engineer, I want to see values, I want to see figures, I want to see benchmarks, I want to see safety referrals, not necessarily the English we see in some paragraphs that they draft that they bring us as draft laws. So what, with your experience in NNPC, would you recommend, what regulatory frameworks would you recommend for hybrid solutions in Nigeria?
Okay, thank you so much. I like the experience you talked about, right? Sorry, I think this should be like this. All right, I think this mic makes me feel like one commentator or something. Okay, so I believe that when it comes to policies, people say Nigeria has a lot of policies, and I think maybe that's what the problem is. We probably have too many policies.
Fair enough.
One of the biggest successes with hybrid power and power diversification, interestingly, in Sub-Saharan Africa is South Africa. And I consistently follow their energy industry, and they typically have a 5-year energy plan that they update. And that's where they did a lot of policy, developed a lot of policy instruments for their own renewable sector, solar, wind, and all of that, right? There's something that has been lacking in Nigeria. First of all, we see the energy sector in diverse ways. The oil and gas sector is seen as a revenue earner, not as an energy provider, right? Most countries see their energy resources to power the country. We see it primarily to make money. And that matters because that shapes how you do policy, right? How you see that business shapes how you do policy. It's important in Nigeria that all our energy policy should be driven from one overarching energy plan. And this is how countries do it. The Nigerian energy, I don't know if anybody in this room is aware of the energy master plan of Nigeria. You right?
Yes.
The last one was done in 2002, right? Then we now did one 2022. Then they relaunched it in 2024 because nobody knew it was existing. So they relaunched it this year again. So I went in and downloaded that, I think a few months ago, and I read it. And truly, what we should have is one national energy policy stroke master plan. Underneath it will now be subsidiary issues like regulations, acts, policies, fiscal policies. Oil will be under, gas will be there, solar, hydro, all of them tying into that policy, almost an immutable policy that we will keep fidelity to. Truly, no country keeps total fidelity to their policies because I've read some of the 20-year China plans, right? And because I was working on nuclear recently, I had to do some research on nuclear, and I discovered that even they fail, but they have that they look to. That's like the beacon, right? That points to where the country wants to go when it comes to its energy plan. And that creates that focus for everyone. So you don't have disparate policies all around. Yes, REA might be doing its best, shining in one little space. How much problem can it solve, right? How much scale can it generate? So when it comes to policy, I believe it's time. In monetary policy, you see Nigeria has strong monetary policy. Finance, you have the medium-term expenditure framework. Everybody knows what it's like. In fact, tax policy, day before yesterday, was revamped by the new the tax team, right? And they're sending it to National Assembly. But you will never see that for energy policy. We almost had a ray of hope when they said they wanted to combine all of them under the energy ministry. And for me, I was like, wow, this is good, right? Because we need to start seeing energy policy making as central to our prosperity. It is then that we can then start putting all of it together. Subsidiary issues like REA will be on one part. NNPC will be subsidiary to the energy policy. Gas will be subsidiary to energy policy. Coal will be subsidiary to energy policy if we do it. All the other subsidies. So I think that needs to coalesce all our energy policy into one is important. And then every other policy takes strength from that energy master plan that we have. Then we can now start talking about what to do for hybrid, feed-in tariffs, net metering, like you're talking about, incentives, tax credits, and all of those subsidies that we want to apply. Because we're talking from one point of view, and then we now distill it to every area. In that place, you will have a hybrid energy policy itself, maybe not energy system, that includes all of this. And we can then shoot straight from there. That's what almost every country I know has done. Then you keep reviewing that plan. You said you went to India in 2014. It's because of some of these policies that they have. And today they got to 100% of this. Maybe next 5 years, somebody will say he visited Nigeria and the policy has been a success. So we must be optimistic as much as possible.
Round of applause for him, please. So, just to summarize what you've been saying to us in the past few minutes, your opinion is that Nigeria should harmonize, or we should have a unitary energy policy from which we distill the other components, maybe power, renewable energy and non-renewable energy sources. And then under renewable energy, we have solar, we have wind, thermal, hydro, and so on.
Yes, that's it. Because you look at the energy transition plan that was done last year. I'm not sure anybody has read it since that last year. It was a nice website, but it wasn't done by Nigeria actually, because I read it. And I can tell you, you ask somebody in the ministry today.
Are you suggesting they did a copy and paste?
No, not really. But you see the people that did it, they wrote their names there now. It's NGOs that did it. It's NGOs and some foundations, nice foundations, brilliant foundations in Abuja that did that energy transition plan. I go there often, and I don't think you ask anybody. If you look at that energy transition plan and look at the National Energy Master Plan and the National Energy Policy, you don't see any link.
So it was a contract?
Not really. It was people making efforts. People are making efforts because they see gaps. But those efforts needs to be hybridized, right? Since we are in an hybrid dialogue session, right? All of these policies need to be. And where you see overlaps and unnecessary flesh, you curate and find you have a policy that everybody can say. If you have conflicts between two ministries or two organizations, let's assume for the sake of liberty, REA has an issue with Ministry of Environment or something on one issue. Then you say, what does the energy policy say? Everybody goes there. This is what the energy policy says. Back off environment. REA has to take charge of this. It's simple. It's easy. And this is what I think about this.
In our economy, we run a mixed economy in Nigeria, where the private sector and the public sector work together to achieve certain objectives. How do you think, I know that you're working with NNPC, but how do you think that the public sector the private sector rather, can come in to assist the government, the public sector in this case, in the implementation of hybrid solutions?
Actually, I'm not speaking for NNPC in this session. I'm speaking as Adedamala.
Okay.
But NNPC is
that's an important emphasis.
Disclaimer. Yeah. But NNPC is actually a private company now.
Yeah. Okay.
Right?
Yes, that's correct.
It shows in some of the. If you look at recently, in the last few weeks, we've been in the news because we are trying to remind people that we are a private company. Right? Mm-hmm. That's what we are doing. We are trying to tell everybody we are a private company. We can buy, you can buy. So you understand what I'm saying? So NNPC is actually a private company. But I believe the role of private entrepreneurs, everybody in this is first. And this is why we are here today. Lobbying and dialogue is critical because by osmosis, some of these ideas move, right? There's this diffusion of thoughts and ideas at some of this. I want to believe there will be other people from diverse areas. Private sector do not joke with lobbying even in developed countries. But in Nigeria, I'm not sure we do that enough. In the US, the Inflation Reduction Act that Biden passed was nothing, there's nothing inside that is an Inflation Reduction Act. It was basically a Green Energy Act, coded as Inflation Reduction Act. But that took years of lobbying at all the COPs that has happened and all the lobbying internally and commitment to international obligations. So I believe private individuals, and I think Hamda and all of that, you guys need to be louder. And I'm talking about being involved in asking candidates, what's your plan for renewable? What's your this? We will support. You see, I think you see police union or even unions declare support for presidential candidates in America. Like as I was reading last week, a police union will describe this is the candidate you are supporting. The association should be able to say, based on the interactions, we release a press report that we are supporting this particular candidate. It's going to be tough on the short run. But let me tell you something. The candidate you are supporting, you might not win. Don't be worried. The candidate that you didn't support will say, these guys didn't support me that time because of this. Maybe they have something that they're saying. Well, you know, Nigerians will like rocking the boat. But I've seen that advocacy works a lot. Goes further than you can think in government cycles and in non-government cycles. It goes further than you can think. The tax policy that is going to the National Assembly is huge. If that thing goes through, it's going to change a lot of things. But it's happened because a lot of people came together and said, this is what we want the government to do. And it's going to a policy document today. So I believe that. I believe partnerships. A lot of, I'll do it alone with private companies in Nigeria, instead of partnerships and doing it together. You get a gig from a government, instead of partnering and saying, let's go and do this together, you try to lobby it alone, and then you fall short, and you give the industry a bad name for hybrid systems, right? I believe innovations too, and I don't want to rule out Nigerians. I mean, I believe the best guys' minds are in this new sector. So I'll stop at that. I'll give the other panelists a chance to contribute to that. Thank you.
Yes, but just before you drop your mic, metaphorically,
Yes.
because the mic
I
is
can't
always
drop
on your...
this one.
Don't you think that private organizations can also support government effort through research and development?
Oh, definitely.
And the reason why I'm asking this question, why I'm mentioning this point, is because some time ago, I was in the Shenzhen area, and we were at the Huawei headquarters. And we were told, because Huawei is a private organization, and we're told that the company spent their money, 20%, in research and development. And about 60% of their staff work in R&D. They have a very massive library where they document several of their works, but maybe not their patents. I didn't see that, you know. And these things help them to make value propositions to the renewable energy market. When a particular equipment comes out this year, they're already working on renewing it. They're not working on marketing it. A bulk of their staff are working on how to make the previous product that was released to be better. In fact, they have a product launch tomorrow, which I'm supposed to attend. So back to my point, don't you think that research and development should be something that private sector should look at? Because we are very weak in that, maybe if not absent. What are your thoughts on that?
I think R&D is underrated because it's actually very costly, and private companies can't do it. Huawei is a private company in quotes. Don't forget. So, doctor said something, negative interest rate in China. You can't compete with Chinese companies because the government support and the reliance on government, though not stated in public, is well understood, well established. So, because you're throwing a lot of money away when you're researching. You're finding something you have never seen before.
Trial and errors.
Trial and error. So, and you lose money from it. So, I believe that private companies can take very little risk when it comes to R&D because you raised money. You can't take any, doctor can't take a risk. He can't take a risk with his money on R&D. He will probably look for solutions. So I still believe, I'll take it, my opinion, and strongly on this is, I believe R&D should be subsidized. It's one of the things that actually needs subsidy. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. But I would also add that if a company is genuinely interested in research, you mustn't do a $1 billion research at once. There are students who are carrying out research on their own in the universities, and a little support could go a long way. If somebody did not have 100,000 to carry out a simulation, but could just submit his thesis and get his C, and the company knows that they're interested in, say, lead-acid battery development or wind energy development, and you could give that student 100,000 or maybe even less to take their thesis from a C to an A and give you a potential product in the making. I think it's about intent. If we're genuinely interested in that, we'll be able to do it. It mustn't be $1 billion research work. Okay, to Mr. Lamide, I would also hear your thoughts on that research point, but then what are the challenges that hybrid solutions pose, and how can these challenges be turned to opportunities? So you're answering both on R&D and then on economic
Yeah. So I think, I mean, you hit the nail on the head. I think there's a role that research and development plays, but I mean, research and development means suggests typically innovation, but I choose to look at it from in addition to market intelligence, you know, so where is the market going? So you use informed decision making to guide how policies are made or how investments are made. And so that's one area that is a specialty of AMDA. We do research and we publish, for example, the Benchmarking Africa Mini-Grid report. Shameless plug, look out for the 2024 edition coming out in December this year. But what that does is it informs how, you know, it helps you, we can benchmark anything. As I said, I'm able to tell you what's happening when Nigeria is doing better, when Nigeria is falling short. And so that helps us know what's happening in other markets and what we can do better. Speaking to the risks that hybrid systems pose, I'm not an engineer, so I would not seek to inform you of what, you know, technical risks there are. But I think, you know, if we're going down the route of hybrid systems, even speaking to the example that Dr. Segun made, you know, there's a cost to bringing in multiple sources of electricity. So what that means is that the higher, you know, the initial sort of, I spoke about interest rates, the initial investment is quite high. And so what that naturally should mean is that the tariff would be high because you're going to pay more to recover the cost of that infrastructure. Infrastructure is not expensive. And unfortunately, today, we don't produce a lot of the equipment that is used to power our homes. And so there's a huge foreign exchange implication on that. So we see subsidy as a taboo word today, but, you know, in many cases, there's no country that has electrified its people without some sort of subsidy regime. And so I think, just speaking to the risk of just the cost, I think is a risk. Potentially, and this is, I guess I'll defer to Dr. Segun's view, there's also potentially maybe a human capacity or technical capacity gap that might need to be plugged in. But I genuinely don't think that Nigeria struggles, largely speaking, with technical capacity. It might just be maybe people being not being as innovative or responsive. But I will close with just areas that I think we could work on. Again, I say we have policies, and I quite like the point you made about harmonizing policies. But what we need to start doing is partnering and thinking pragmatically about the solution. So going to the interconnected mini-grid question, there's absolutely no reason why our distribution companies should not be partnering with multiple utility firms today to close the gap. We should be seeing more franchises. We should be seeing more completely ceding off parts of the distribution network to mini-grid companies. We should be seeing more interconnected mini-grids. So I think that's where I'll close now. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Let me, you know, you mentioned something, technical capacity gap.
Yeah.
And you seem to suggest that we have a robust array of this technical capacity. But
I would defer to the engineers, but I don't think that's a big problem. That's the highest problem on the scale. But I'll defer to you.
Okay, well, you know, my opinion on this is, in engineering, apart from coming up with a product, a component of engineering or a component of production is the design. There are not many competent design engineers. And oftentimes you will see in some projects we have offshore technical requirement for design engineers. Because there are only a few companies, Dr. Segun mentioned just a few companies, you see how long it took these companies to get to where they are. Whereas we have 40 to 50% of our population to electrify, to take power to. And we have so few engineers or so few technical personnel who have design skills in renewable energy indeed. We have very few engineers who have actual skills in biogas design, in biomass design as a whole, as a genre in biomass engineering. And we don't have so many qualified or quality engineers in solar design. But what we see is people being able to contract these jobs out. In fact, before a building like this is electrified, or as let me use Dr. Shegun's let me use Dr. Shegun's office, before it is energized, this building must have a lighting design. Some of our street lights, for instance, don't have a preceding design. And even though we don't produce those street lights in country, if an engineer is able to generate quality design for the installation of that solar street light, it becomes a component of the engineering, what do you call it now, of the engineering space. But of the ecosystem, thank you very much.
Question. Is
Please.
it that we don't have the competent designers or we just cut corners?
Well, first of all, it is not even emphasized.
Right.
And because it is not emphasized, there's no need generated for it, and people don't see the need to acquire those skills. And because you don't acquire those skills, when we have to carry out standard projects, then the contracting firm or the client has to seek an offshore technical capability.
Permit me to add to this. I belong to a Telegram group for DIY Solar Group, right?
Yes.
So I go there and read once in a while. I've not been able to put in practice some of the things I've learned there. But many times, many of the home solar projects are actually just design issues.
Thank you.
My solar is bad after 6 months because in that DIY group, you see many people talk about, no, this is just simply also, and I'm just like, wow, these issues are so simple, but because in that space, there's that diffusion of knowledge, that's why I can see that there's a real technical problem. So I may tend to agree with you that there's actually a serious depth of technical capacity, especially for even the bigger scale projects. So if you cannot do the small scale household hybrid systems now and design it
Once I'm
properly,
done with Dr.
tell me
Shegun,
about the big ones. Thank you.
Okay, that's helpful. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Let's close with Dr. Shegun's remarks on what role the government can play in advancing hybrid energy solutions. You had mentioned a couple of ideas before, but maybe you could just wrap them up now. What role can government play? And after Dr. Shegun's contribution, we will get to the audience, both those online and our wonderful audience here in-house, and take questions for the panelists. Thank you, Dr. Shegun.
Thank you so much. So I'll be very quick so that we can interact with the audience. One, I want to agree with Adedamola on the issue of coordination. To be honest, one of the challenges that, stakeholders like myself have faced is lack of coordination, particularly in government circles. So I agree, Nigeria needs a super energy plan that everyone, every subsector we look up to. Okay, like a constitution, right? We need that a lot. There are instances where Ministry of Power, Environment, the REA, and a few others, there are clashes and there are no conditions. That's number one. Number two, in terms of one of the issues that we see is the issue of integration. One of the problems I see in the sector is integration. I don't know how many of us, and I'm sure we've experienced it before. So you have a hybrid power system in your house already. You have grid, you have your inverter, you have your gadgets, and then integration between grid and your solar can be difficult. Grid comes with a very high volt and can even blow that inverter that is supposed to be part of the hybrid. So it's one of the challenges I see in hybrid solution. And I think government, framework and infrastructure development can help that. Thirdly and finally, this of research. Yes, I think government still has a role to play in research kickoff, and then you build super organizations, that can also begin to fund research. Okay, at some stages, my own opinion, at the start-ups, government needs to get involved a lot. Universities are research institutions, they need to be well-funded, and then you create a Google, whatever that can have super fund and that now can begin to fund research. So for me, these are roles that government needs to take, improve our infrastructure. Many times when the grid collapses, it's because there are imbalances in energy, systems. And one of the fears we have that we don't have grid-tied solar now is that will the grid accept
And absorb,
solar?
yeah.
It might collapse unless we have updates and better infrastructure. I'll end here.
Thank you very much. Please a round of applause for him. So yes, I wanted to say one or two things on the points you've made, but maybe let's get straight now to the audience and let's know who has questions for which of the. So when you are asking a question, please direct it to someone. If you don't have anybody to direct it to, you can. So we have one. Oh, a couple. Okay. Microphone.
Okay, yes.
Okay, can we have the microphone? Okay. So your name and your organization before the question.
Okay, thank you. Good evening, everyone. My name is Dr. Alexander Akolo. I work with GIZ. I'm a technical advisor with GIZ. My questions, I don't know who to direct them to actually, whether I should direct them to Dr. Adaju or to the AMDA man. So the embedded generation regulation has come out since 2012, and around 2024. Embedded generation basically also talks about hybrid systems of some sort, solar, gas, whatever, hybrid, any which way, right? But the issue is we're talking over 10 years now. We don't see so much, we don't see enough embedded generation systems in the country across the 12 discos. That is number one. As in complementing that, when you talk about mini grids, there is Hello? Hello? Okay. Apologies for the break in transmission.
Yeah.
So I was saying that on the other side, to complement my first question on embedded, right? There are over 150 mini grids across the country. Some of them functioning, some not functioning. I'm sure they and you know better. But the thing is, there's a lot of focus on isolated mini grids, and everybody is running away from. I wish there were some developers here. Is that? Thank you. So I think between both of you,
I'll attempt to. I think maybe I'll start with why. Probably the answer is to both. The point about why they're not more embedded generation, and then why we're not seeing more interconnected mini-grids. I think the one thing I said when I was closing was that we need to be a bit more pragmatic about our contracting arrangement. So Nigeria has a legacy of almost like a monopoly, where first of all, PHCN was basically a national monopoly. Then we've chopped it up now into different distribution companies. And those distribution companies are also natural monopolies. So I think there's that legacy which is causing the inertia in terms of having a broader open mind to invite. And so you'll probably find that some of the discos are a bit territorial in their approach to the relationship they would have with a mini-grid developer, for example. So again, we've seen the emergence of interconnected mini-grids, but not enough. And yet the first commissioned one was last year, I believe, Total. And that is still going through some teething issues. And a lot of developers today are sitting at the desk of AETC to get some of these contracts off the table. But probably based on the discos are literally many of the discos are bankrupt. And so there's still a bit of a, how do we address the existing debts? So is it the new developer that's going to absorb this debt? Or do I just, give them a clean bill of health, clean balance sheets, and they come in and they power these guys? And so there's some contracting issues that affect their ability to have more of these deals. And there are people that are waiting on the sidelines for Total to succeed so that we can come in and say, oh, there's already a template for this thing running for over a year. The developer is making money. It's a win-win situation with the disco. So I don't know if I have a definitive answer, but I've seen in real time that there's some contracting issues that are making it very difficult. On almost like the disco has too much power in terms of the contractual relationship, which may frustrate some developers from going into interconnected mini grids, and I think the same would apply for embedded generation. Thank you.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I'll just cite an example. There's this almost 1 megawatt interconnected mini grid in Ekwe by one of AMDA members.
Yeah.
F1C.
Yes.
And it says it took him, over 1 year just to even get the attention of the disco.
Yeah.
To collaborate for something that will be beneficial to both parties. So I think it's basically the issue of collaboration between parties that can make this happen.
And just to add to what the two panelists have said, there could be an issue with subsidies to be enjoyed. I do not think that subsidies or any financial incentives are attached to developers who build interconnected mini-grids. It's those who go to the beyond the grid areas, those places where the grid is absent, that can get some form of incentives from the government.
I must say, though, that
Okay.
the new DES program, which is being imminently to be launched, has very much embraced interconnected mini-grids under the program. I think they seek to build up to 125, if not more, interconnected mini-grids. So there's an avenue for interconnected mini-grid developers or companies to benefit from subsidy arrangements like the DES program would provide.
Okay, I'm sure we'll get to know about that as it comes up. The microphone, please.
My name is Benjamin Aduli. I run a company called ACVS Limited. That stands for African Capital and Business Support Limited. Nigeria is like a company without a business plan. and that's why you find out that businesses that make money in Nigeria are businesses that can survive in a chaos. Because when there are chaos, there are opportunities. Unfortunately, in the power sector, it can't work that way. Because everybody must come together and work together for it to work. The reason why that is very important is because the solution that Mr. A is looking for is an opportunity for Mr. C to take advantage of if he's thinking me alone. And you find a case of dog eat dog. So you keep killing yourself, and all of you are dying gradually without knowing about it. So, because if you look at what we have discussed here today, I can identify 5 problems. 1, we do not know how to take opportunity and scale it up. That's a big problem. Because there are small opportunities that there is nobody saying, how do you take this from $1 billion business to a $1 billion business? That's one. And if that must happen, funding solution must be on the table, because you cannot use bank loan to develop power sector. It will never happen. So you need, therefore, energy bank that can provide funds that are energy friendly to grow that sector. But the danger in doing that, the danger is, how do you ensure, therefore, that when you provide negative, what do you call it? Negative interest rate loan, that a smart man, like one man I know, will not take the loan for power and then go and do agriculture. And then how do you ensure that there is consistency? In all of what I have said now, the question is to the dialogue, the convener of this meeting. We need a national dialogue that can be looking at the holistic problem, not your own side. Because if everybody is looking at his own side, we will remain here till thy kingdom come. We will never get out of here. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I think his contributions were mostly suggestive, and he's telling us that we cannot develop the way we are going. Sir, thank you very much. Next. There's a young man at the back there, so that we clear up with him. Come forward.
Okay. Good evening, everyone. So my name is Oluwafaka Precious. I work with a company called New Frontier Development Limited, and I work as a financial analyst. So my question is directed specifically to Mr. Adedamola. Yes, so solar, biodiesel, nuclear power, I think these are really great initiatives. And more specifically for solar, I think Nigerians has been doing well on that. I think there's a trend now, and a lot of Nigerians are gradually, adapting or integrating more hybrid solutions to diversify their energy, mix, especially from the solar perspective. But where am I heading to now? I want to talk more about the wind, right? Because this one specifically resonated with me because I'm doing a research on it, and from my findings, I see that Nigeria actually has abundant wind resource to explore, especially from the northern side, Katsina, Kebbi, even in the coastal region of Lagos, right? So I feel like there's a lot of abundant resource to be harnessed from wind energy as well. And if you look at the current situation of the country now, I don't think there's anything going on that. If I recall, the only project I've seen on wind energy was maybe the one in Katsina that up to today and beyond, it's going to kick off the next year, and it is not still, come on board now. Last when I read, I had some of the turbines that were actually installed in the farm in Katsina. That's a 40 megawatt project, anyway, wind farm in Katsina. I heard that some of the turbines are already dropping or thereabout because the government are not actually taking care of the infrastructure or thereabout. But most importantly, I don't think it's even operational, right? So my question here is that in a country when we're also trying to diversify our energy mix, and when we know that we have abundant wind resource, right? How do we actually harness this? And what is the learning point we can actually take from the Katsina project, which has not, I might even say it's a failed project, right? What can you actually take for them to actually, harness the wind resource Nigeria actually has to offer to actually satisfy our energy mix? Yeah, thank you.
All right, thanks so much. And I think this question came to me because I kind of deprioritized wind when I was discussing this earlier. And I'll still stay on that, right? So, two things I would say. First, power generation is about the market. And that's why we don't have power in Nigeria. We don't have a technical problem per se. We can import technical solutions, but we can't import market solutions. And the reason why I deprioritized wind was looking at our comparative advantage. Which one is cheaper? If you look at even the typical levelized cost of energy, right? I think solar is still cheaper than wind in many countries. So for a poor person trying to survive life, you focus on the things that won't hurt you first. You're not going to be buying a Gucci when you can still manage whatever bag you can find in the nearest boutique. So for us, wind is a lux, or any of those ones that don't have comparative advantage. I told you about Chile and India that we talked about. Even in areas, it's about commercial, viability of those projects. The one reason why we have a power problem in Nigeria is basically the market. There is no other reason. That's a fact. We just deceive ourselves. It's the market. The main reason why we have energy issues, the products that we have, I've never heard that diesel is scarce in my life in the last 15 years. I don't know if anybody has heard diesel is scarce. But there's one place where we have a market problem. That product, we have had problems for it for 40 years. Petrol, right? Because the market is distorted. LPG. Have you ever heard that LPG is scarce? It might be costly, but it's never scarce because the market is not broken. And he made a good point that there's some things you can do in chaos. Energy, because of the chain, because it's layered on either, that chain must be delicately taken care of. Once it's broken in one place, everything falls. So if you look at the power sector, and at a stage, 2012, 2013, we had a window of sealing the market. So if you notice, the Band A, some people were joking, the bandit sector, the Band A places, people are complaining that they have too much power, actually, in some areas. Why? Because the commercial incentive moved to that band, and people started supplying that area. So we have to have that decision as a country what do we want to do about this market issue? It's not balkanization of regulation or balkanization of the market that will solve it until we take that bold step of looking at what is really commercially advantageous to us and how we want to structure that market. We will keep struggling with it, and then likes of wind and all of that might actually be our priority then. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Before the next question, let me provide a little bit of clarification on the Leyafa project. That's the job that my company supervised, and it's actually under my department. It's not a fake project. I think it would be uncharitable for me to be here and try to act neutral and allow you to call a project which my department supervised a fake project. When that project started, in the middle of the Boko Haram crisis, the contract VENE, the contractors, the EPCCs, their staff was kidnapped. And I think there was even death along the line. Wow. And the VENE contract had to be modified. There's a lot of things about it. I don't want us to go into it, but I want to provide a proper clarification on that. Otis handled that project. It's under my department, and it's not a fake project. Next person. Good evening.
My name is Larry Abdul. I am from South Africa. I want to speak into the expertise gap in design that you speak about. So you see, you talk about the energy value chain has to be a single line that cannot be closed. That is the problem that comes from that area. You're surprised to know that there are just do something for me. And if Lukman is charging you, say, 100 naira, and an engineer asks you to pay 500 naira, you are just going to learn that skill for nothing. That's why everybody thinks the engineering skill. I am a project engineer for South Africa, and I will tell you for free, there is no scale of mini-grid project that you will ever see in this Nigeria operating that you will not see in Nigeria that will do it. The problem is, can you pay them? People will find something to say about, if I tell you I want to collect, say, 5 million for your design, and you say, oh, I've seen somebody that does it for 2 million. That happens in every sector anyway, but then it still boils down to people not demanding for this expertise and where it is. Where the government comes in is that, I don't know, these days, the government, the federal government of Nigeria see themselves as an entity, and the agency of Nigerian government see themselves as a separate entity. The professional body in engineering, they are not doing anything about it because of the energy company out there. They do not have the slightest idea what renewable energy engineering means, and they are running a company on it. So you want to install a solar, you just the next solar shop you see when enter there. They give you something, you install it. Now they are saying renewable energy is not working. It will not work because you did not do the right thing. The professional body are not doing anything about it. I am opportune to have traveled to a few countries. I remember in Canada, before you climb ladder to hang solar, you have to have a certificate they call working at height. When you finish your solar installation, you have to invite the TSSA to come and inspect the solar installation. They bend down under your roof. They see one cable touching the roof, you will pack everything. That project is not coming to life.
That's correct.
There's nobody doing all of this in Nigeria. And even if we harmonize everything, and there's still these quacks out there building projects that will kill all of us, the value chain that we are talking about is not complete. That area needs to be looked into as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Yes, please.
My name is Sean Energen. It's an interesting topic, hybrid energy solution. I have a background in electronics engineering, so I know a little about networks. So there is something we call hybrid networks. And as you were speaking, it just occurred to me that our discussions are going in a hybrid manner. So someone says something about R&D and then funding, and then it occurs to me that if you fund power, you have subsidized R&D. Because if I have power, I'll do more with my time. Therefore, time is money. If I save time, I'll save money, I'll use it. Do you get what I'm saying?
Yes.
Now, for our hybrid systems to work, Dr. Adaju's excess solar has to be on the grid. If you don't have that smart system working, it will be like computers. If our phones were individual devices that were not on a network, it wouldn't even be 1% as functional as it is. So the same thing will happen to our power system when we have a hybrid system that connects everybody that has power to sell. We should be able to put it on the grid and sell it to someone who wants to buy. That is the only way we can maximize, just the way the internet maximizes the power of computers. Hybrid power systems will maximize the power of we'll generate a lot of energy that nobody can measure. We all have generators in our house, small ones. We have battery systems. We have a lot of systems that nobody has counted. But those things are not on the network, so we don't even know what we have. So if we keep this discussion going and keep making these linkages from one value chain to another, I think we will achieve a lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everyone. My name is Victor Vital. Before I begin, I'd like to say the Power Dialogue does a lot because I had like 4 questions, but discussions keep going, just keep cancelling out as they get answered. But I have one question for Dr. Shegun, because you're the banker, you're the finance man. But before I go, I want to say a few things. Nigeria, like one of the speakers said, needs to move our mindsets from producing for money to producing for the country. Two, Nigeria has a huge deposit of gas and oil to the tune of roughly 30 trillion cubic feet. Also, the Nigerian sector is nowhere close to most of the countries that we mentioned during this dialogue, like India and Chile. Now, this is the question. When we have conversations about sustainable power supply, why is the focus on renewable energy when renewable energy has issues such as storage and inconsistencies? When Nigeria has such a vast resource that we could go back to the traditional way of generating electricity and to still be cheap. So why do we keep focusing on renewable? I know it's a little bit controversial, right? But why do we keep going back to renewable energy? Because solar, for example, the most expensive thing in solar is the batteries. The wind turbine, like one of us mentioned, is also very expensive to establish, right? But Nigeria has so much resources when it comes to oil and gas, and they're even advocating for, gases to be moved to cars now. Why can't we go back to the traditional way of generating electricity? That way bankers can look at it as less risky because this has worked. Why can't we go back there and then generate to a stage where we can now get to some of the mentioned countries, then switch gradually to renewable? Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. I'll make an attempt at answering this question. But let me start from the excess gas reserve that we have. I'm also a believer in the gas value chain for Nigeria as a competitive advantage for the country. 30 trillion cubic feet, it's no joke, all right? And I keep saying it that, look, I wish Nigeria could have developed its gas infrastructure and run very well on gas. Maybe I won't be in renewables today. I keep saying that. So that means there are challenges. We have excessive reserve in gas. We have not been able to. Hello?
Testing. It's not on yet.
Yes. Okay, so gas, I was part of a team that was trying to understand, how can we improve the supply of gas, for example, to, 80% of Nigeria energy generation is thermal, gas. Why is it that gas cannot get to power plants? What are the issues? So there are commercial, technical issues that, has now not made that happen. So now, the issue is why renewables? One, I believe we have some advantage also in renewables. We have some resources. We have some, solar, some level of wind, of course, hydro, like, Lamide mentioned, that we can also integrate into the energy system of the country. There's what we call energy security. If you rely too much on one source and it collapses, then, you are at risk. You are not secured. That's number one, energy security. Number two, the world is also talking about sustainable energy generation. So why not? There's the issue of climate change, global warming, COP28. Everybody's talking around this. So why Nigeria also should be part of that, that system of saying, look, if I have resources in renewable energy, why can't I deploy it? Gas is the energy transition for Nigeria. I hope you are aware. I believe in that. I support it. But when you are transiting, that means you are going somewhere. So that means ultimately gas should take us to where we want to go to. Renewables, for me. So many advantages. It's renewable. That means it can naturally replenish itself. Our 30 trillion cubic feet of gas reserve will finish one day. I hope you are aware. But the sun, since the day of creation, till maybe the world will collapse, the sun will keep rising and setting. So it's an energy mix, and I believe Nigeria also want to ride on it. And I'll close with this. India is heavily powered by coal, and they are still doing renewables. South Africa, same.
Saudi Arabia.
Saudi Arabia, and in fact, Saudi Arabia is even, it should be a nation that should not even go near anything renewables. I went for a program at Abu Dhabi, and I was seeing arrays of panels in the desert. I couldn't believe. So that means there must be some comparative advantage why the world is also going to that area. Nigeria says Vision 30. So that means we're not even saying renewables will take over the energy space. We're saying by year 2030, Nigeria should have 30,000 megawatts capacity, 30% should be renewables. Do you get that fact now? And so it's not as if Nigeria is saying, oh, let us move everything to renewable, it will not work, right? So there must be energy mix, and renewables will definitely be part of that mix. My submission.
And let me do you have something
just to add, I don't think your point is a controversial statement, and he's sort of giving credence to it. There's no country that would industrialize without utilizing all its available
array of
fuel
energy
sources.
resources.
But you would agree that oil and gas has been a gift and a curse to Nigeria, and that's because of the concentration risk. So the reason why renewables are being given the right attention, I think, is because we need to gradually start to look at it from a broad perspective of what are we have so many water resources. There are literally rivers that can literally provide power to communities that we're not utilizing at the lowest cost, because for hydro, for example, the initial cost is quite high, but the cost of operation is extremely low. Now, there are environmental considerations, but the cost benefit for me, as far as I'm concerned, is a no-brainer. So I think it's just about utilizing every possible source that is available, and which we're really we've leaned more towards the oil and gas thing, and the professional here has said that we're basically using it to make money as opposed to using it to energize our country. So that's my
Add to that, right? I wanted to just add to that, and I think I wanted to say this so I don't forget. Saudi Arabia is probably the biggest exporter of oil. It's into renewables. There's nothing wrong with doing renewables intelligently, right? You don't do it out of fashion. And that's why I said, look at what's best for you, your comparative advantage, what's best. But also, this is an idea for even solar developers in Nigeria. Solar developers in Nigeria are focused on those who are doing it for power generation. Solar developers in Nigeria, and I won't charge for this, should actually focus on those who are doing it for decarbonization. And interestingly, they are the ones that can pay you better. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Right? The guys who can pay you and absorb your doctor is writing down. Doctor, I'll send my invoice. The guys who can pay you, who can pay for your feed-in tariffs from solar easily, are those who are trying to decarbonize. So your strategy should not just be focused on those who are trying to generate power, but start selling to those who are trying to decarbonize.
Is NNPC decarbonizing?
I'm not talking about, I am not talking about any company.
You want to
here.
sell? I want to sell.
But I'm in the sector, and I'll tell you something. Focus your business. For a solar guy here today, invest in. You should be attending actually oil and gas conferences and be taking booths. AMDA should be taking booths in oil and gas conferences. People will branch, and you offer solutions for oil and gas industries. There are many facilities that would take solar. Though we operate in Niger Delta, where rainfall is a problem, but I can tell you there are solutions you can actually deploy to the oil and gas sector, and you actually make more money and you get better benefits. So the polar bear in Abuja has offered some.
You know, just to very quickly add to that, I wanted to say that after Dr. Shegun's contribution, your question is very valid, but I think that it also brings the importance of climate change education. So because we're not doing renewable energy like Lamide has said because it's convenient, but because science has suggested that we need it to save our planet. Some people may not believe in it, but that's also because that also shows rather that there's more need for public awareness concerning climate change. And that's one of the reasons this fora is set up. Please.
Yeah, okay. So it's more like a contribution. And I'm responding because of Engineer Basil, your comment about it being uncharitable if you don't have to respond, if you did respond to the conversation. So I work with a disco. Sorry about the outages. You should not mock me when I'm going out.
We shall mock you.
But I just wanted to mention, because my DEX actually sits with inputs that come in from developers. Yeah. And I can say that for my own disco, we don't have that challenge. And I'm responding because you specifically mentioned my disco. And Total Project was a proof of concept project that was signed in 2019. The tripartite agreement was actually signed in 2019, but yet it was commissioned in 2023. So that just tells you how, as a disco, innovatively, we have been thinking as far back as 2019 how to incorporate decentralized solutions within our own franchise areas. So AEDC does not have, if there's any developer that has a paper, it's because that developer does not have the capacity. And that's something Basil mentioned. What I think developers should do is should be, rather than the small players just trying to look for small hanging fruits, maybe there can be a consolidation of these small people to be bigger so they can do larger projects. Because what you have is, for example, I won't call names, but we have developers, we have signed tripartite agreements since 2022 and nothing has been done on site. So, of course, as a disco, I won't talk to such players anymore. I would take up the entry level of developers and talk to the serious guys. And we're talking to the serious guys. We have projects that will be deployed. The first on-grid hybrid will be done by Daystar Commission next month. We're talking with Husk, we're talking with PowerGen, scaling on some other projects. So AEDC is not one of those discos. I just felt I should mention that because
I'm so glad we have AEDC in the house.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. Thank you.
But if I may, I think we could still work together to improve, because there's so many serious developers that you could work with, and I think let's have a conversation about what that would look like. Thank you.
I know I'm not the moderator, permit me, but what would interest me is the commercial. How do they manage it? For me, maybe an outside conversation. I think so. But that integration is interesting to me. So, sir, even if light goes, don't go, please.
All right. Good evening, everyone. I want to appreciate the panelists and everyone who asked questions. Mine stems from a personal experience I had this morning on my way to work. So I just went on.
Just before you go on, can we have your name and
my name is
your
Engineer
organization?
Francis Ibirim. I work with Sea Solar Energy Limited. All right. I had a personal experience, like I said. I came on social media and I saw this post about a school where solar-powered keke was built as a project. So the question the person asked was, where are these guys today? And this project was done many years back, and I read the comments, and someone said, the guy is now into software development. That is no more pushing this. Now, why am I bringing this up? Is because we mentioned R&D, efforts in helping to improve sustainable power supply. And when our panelists were interacting, I had mentioned about government. So I want to ask Dr. Segun and Mr. Lamide, don't you think there are more roles that private sector can play in partnering with our institutions towards this R&D effort? Because it's going to be tackling three things we mentioned today. We mentioned design problem. It's one critical area that it will tackle. Another thing also is also in terms of education. Then I think one of us also mentioned in his question about storage challenges that come up with using some of these renewable energy solutions. So I want to find out from you, what roles can these private energy players play to help improve this partnership with schools? Because if you look at developed countries, research is actually funded more from private sector than the governments. So I just want to hear from you. Thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Lamide, maybe you go first.
Okay. Yeah, thanks. I agree with you. I mean, R&D is critical. And I mentioned a few organizations outside Nigeria, that's also private sector that funds R&D heavily, right? But I don't know, maybe 100 years back, how it was in those countries and who led the R&D. Where we are now, my own little experience about the power sector and maybe renewable energy space, most of the players are still getting to the growth stage. I mean, you can't, most of the big names are established names out of Nigeria. Who are Wiz, just name them. Yeah, exactly. You know, so local players like us are still trying to break into that threshold. So the major focus and concern right now will be how do I stabilize, how do I grow, how do I sustain this business, to be very honest.
Yeah.
But I agree, private sector organizations have a big role to play in R&D. What we try to do is to engage, I belong to a network called Renewable Energy Association of Nigeria, and we try to also engage with funders or partners. When there are innovations to be done, we call the likes of, I mentioned who are we, there are many others, Chinese companies, American companies, German, who are members of RIA now. We say, hey guys, put some funds together to do this. We might not be able to do that, right? Yeah, I totally agree with you, and I hope in the nearest future, private organizations like, CSolars and the rest that I mentioned, can put down $1 million and say, hey, I want to bet on this money for R&D, hopefully.
So if I may add, I think a very practical step that we've taken at AMDA, and I guess I should announce that CSolar is our most recent member. So,
all right.
Pleased to have you here. Is we have a CEO roundtable where the executives, C-suite executives of our developers come speak and talk on like topical issues, financing, technical, policy across the value chain. And we identify top priorities on technical, for example, in a very real-time scenario. Smart metering has been a challenge for many developers. And so as part of the spillovers of the roundtable is that they sit together and they discuss all the issues. And what is happening now is two things. What he said, speaking to donor organizations that have that, the mandate to fund either R&D, or we start to think about creating programs to fund R&D. And secondly, you force, and I use that word loosely, the dialogue. You bring the meter providers into the room and say, this is what we need, And so the R&D is almost, it's like a reverse inquiry where you're saying, this is what the industry needs, so respond to it. So take it into account when you're building or designing the software or the technology. So those are very practical steps with organizations that are still very much, as he said, in the growth stage, that may not have enough funding to invest in R&D, but we as an association, as a block, can come together and sort of outline what those issues are and use that to force dialogue and create the R&D initiatives.
And if I may mention, sorry, I'm jumping, the role that such development partners have played. There's a typical organization that I know, NOMAP, came together and, incubated an organization that has become INFI branches. I hope I'm correct. And it was, the support they gave and what INFI branches is doing today, that's very innovative and also helping the sector, is a typical example of how, for me, R&D or innovation can come, through such, partners. And I believe an INFI branches in the next 5 years or 10 years will be able, capable enough to also say, let me fund the research in one higher institution that points to this, area. Right.
Okay, sorry, I just want to ask a quick question. My name is Omono Okonkwo. I work at the Electricity Hub. So I know years back, the Rural Electrification Agency set up some hybrid energy systems under the Energizing Education Program. So I'd just like to know, how successful have those energy systems been over the years?
Okay, thank you very much. Maybe I should speak just very briefly to that, because I currently work in the phase 3 of that program. And in summary, I can say to you that it has been a success. And how has it been a success? The REA started with the phase 1 and carried out solar mini grid installations in various sites, I think about 7 or so. And they did something that is quite remarkable, if I must say. They take the lessons from the first phase, you put it back in the second phase, you make it better. Currently, we're in the third phase of the program, and there are some of the second phase projects that are yet to be commissioned, but I can tell you that the Energizing Education Program, that's what you're talking about, which is currently in the phase 3, and we're preparing for a phase 4, has been so far a very huge success. And I want to say it has been an incremental success, because where we had technical difficulties in previous phases, those technical difficulties have been made easier. That's what the engineer from, is this Sisola? You, yes. Sun Africa said about we having some technical capacity, but those technical gaps can be filled when those personnel who have the skill, the design skill, the installation skill, the cost engineering skill, they are brought into the project, and the project becomes better. So we take away a lot of English and put in the math. That's what makes things work. Thank you. Is there any panelist who wants to contribute to the EEP question? All right. I think is that all from the audience? One last one. Somebody has the mic at the back.
Hi.
Okay.
Hello, everyone. My name is Temi Tokwe. I just wanted to speak to the person that brought the question of wind. I work with a council called the Nigerian Wind Energy Council. I'm the council coordinator. So that's the response that a lot is going on in wind. And the council is working in a different way because we want to set the path to have like a national master plan. And you will be hearing more from us very soon. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wind Council. Well, let me say I want to see you after the program because that's under my department. I already said it earlier that the Liafa project was under my department at Otis, and we are proud to have been the consultants on Nigeria's first commercial wind energy project.
Yeah, but they just told us we don't need more master plan, that we should integrate. So I hope you are thinking about that.
Okay. So will that be all? Okay. So we will have closing remarks from our panelists. Sorry? We're going to have closing remarks now.
Yeah. Okay.
Time is fast spent. Maybe
Yeah,
make it
1 minute.
Make it brief.
I was privileged to invite to give a lecture in a university in Ibadan, which is a research institute. And this is how I started my presentation. I think it's important. Do we know about an institution called FIRO?
Yes.
All right. FIRO is called Federal Research Institute, right?
Oshodi.
Oshodi. It was created because in 1953, the World Bank research says that research is not coordinated in Nigeria. Because of that, a budget was produced to solve that problem. That was how FIRO was created in 1956. My question to the team was, today, this was 2022, is research now coordinated in Nigeria? Thank you very much.
I think you know the answer already.
Yeah.
But it needs more coordination, obviously. So let's have. Thank you very much for that contribution. Let's have closing remarks, starting from Mr. Adedamola.
A lot. Thanks so much, the audience. I think the questions and the panelists have enriched us today. My own comment is, whatever we need, the most fundamental issue we need to address for hybrid, for on-grid, is the market. We have to take tough decisions. One of the, that incident actually made me lose a little bit of interest in power, because I was in the middle of it, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, NESMF, a lot of interventions by government. But once the interim power period, right, there was interim market period that was extended in 2013, that was supposed to have been done. It was extended in 2015 rather, until date is still extended, almost 10 years. We need to solve that market problem. Of course, there will be, when you're trying to solve a market problem with hard decisions, it means people will fall below. That's where you now apply support and subsidies, right? But if we don't keep that discipline in commercial transactions, in market structure, and we think we're looking for band-aids, we will keep rolling around. Market, commercial. Let's take those hard decisions, and hybrid power problems, grid power problems are going to be a thing of the past. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Please a round of applause for him. We will also have closing remarks from Mr. Lamide Niyafuye.
Thank you very much. My closing remarks are going to border around the point that we should be more pragmatic in our partnerships, and I think the ADC man has sort of addressed that issue. But I will close by just saying that AMDA is an industry association that supports mini-grid companies to scale and sustainability through 4 cardinal pillars: sector coordination and member value, policy, regulatory, and regional coordination, access to capital, and research, data, and standards. So I welcome anyone who's looking for home, in terms of and has a Pan-African outlook as well, to join us. So thank you very much. Cheers.
Round of applause for him, please. Thank you very much, Mr. Lamide. We will hear now from Dr. Segun Adaju.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it's been an exciting evening, very robust conversation, a lot of learnings, even on the part of panelists. I mean, somebody writing when, Adedamola mentioned one point, right? I also want to seize this opportunity to commend the Nigerians who's been playing this space. A lot of names have been mentioned this evening. So clearly you know that, they are pushing the frontiers. Many of them started, the time mini-grid started coming up, I was one of those that said, look, for mini-grid, I might not be able to, I don't want to go into any hinterland or, some very far area, 3 hours away from the next grid, for so many reasons. But some of those guys went. I mean, some of the names we've mentioned tonight, pushing hybrid power systems to the point where we are now, where the National Arts Theatre is at that level, Kano, Bayero University Kano, part of the energizing education.
Yes, NEP.
And I see a lot of opportunities in this market. And it also comes back to the issue of markets and commercials. We have to pay appropriate price for power so that we can all have access to power. Thank you.
Thank you very much. A round of applause for him. So let me thank, but first of all, let me just quickly collect what we've said so far. Mr. Adedamola said that there's need to address the market problem for hybrid solutions in Nigeria. Mr. Lamide says that we need to be more pragmatic and to scale up hybrid solutions in Nigeria, we need more sector funding, more access to capital, more policy regulation. And Dr. Segun Adaju rounded up by saying that there is a lot of opportunities for us to take advantage of in the hybrid solution space in Nigeria. While during this discussion, we've also highlighted the importance of research and development, collaboration among engineering or among organizations generally, but I would say among engineering organizations because I'm an engineer, and without engineering, the renewable energy space is actually nothing. And we also talked about design engineering, design in renewable energy space, and the need for more advocacy for climate change so that people understand that there's need for us to incorporate more hybrid solutions, reducing dirty fuel, increasing clean energy in Nigeria. Let me also use the opportunity to thank the Next Tier team, the Power Hub, the Electricity Hub, for this opportunity of the 98th session of the Power Dialogue. Please, can we give a round of applause to the team? And we can see clearly that these sort of programs improve information dissemination, improve awareness about our electricity situation, and hopefully we will keep getting solutions from these sort of programs for the good of our country. Thank you very much, everyone, and I'm handing over to the next tier team.
Everyone, good evening. My name is Niniola Odeyemi. Trust you had an enlightening night because I did. One of my highlights of this night was the fact that we need research, to drive the sector. We need more research for the implementation. As we all know, our next Power Dialogue, which is the 99th Power Dialogue, is next month, and after 99 is 100. So the Electricity Hub will host its 100th Power Dialogue. Please give us a round of applause. So more points about the 100th Power Dialogue will be passed further in due time. Without further ado, the floor is open for networking, and your refreshments are at the back. Do have a beautiful evening. Good night.
Okay. Let's take this off, right?